Every journey is different, but it all involves becoming resilient of that shame, daring to desire, and daring to take up the space that we are worthy of taking up.
Hello, my LGBTQties, and welcome back to another episode of A Jaded Gay. I'm Rob Lovelace, and today I am a non-jaded gay because I had to go to the DMV to get my license renewed, which I know that might sound like an oxymoron. Going to the DMV equals me being a non-jaded gay, but I was in and out. I got up at the crack of dawn, got there right at 8:30 when they opened, went right in, and within 5 minutes got my license and left. Now, the only downside is I am not a big fan of my license photo. I definitely like my older license photo better, but you can't win them all. Anyway, I am super excited because today we have a very special VIP guest joining us to talk about unbecoming shame and trauma we've experienced as gay men. And we will get into that shortly. But first, you know the drill, tarot time. So you might get a little bit of deja vu because today's card is the Hermit in reversed, which we just pulled a few weeks ago, I believe in the Judy Garland episode. So some of this might sound familiar, but it's what the universe sent us for today. So as you remember, the Hermit is number 9 in the major arcana, and 9 means we're nearing the end of a cycle. And in astrology, it's tied to Virgo, which is very analytical and hardworking. And circling back to the number 9 in numerology, when we are nearing the end of a cycle, we may find a sense of solitude in that. However, when we pull this card in reverse, it's telling us one of two things. We're either not taking enough time for personal reflection, or we're taking too much time for personal reflection and isolating ourselves as a result. And it can also indicate that we're struggling to connect with our spiritual self. And it's no surprise because looking inward, it can be really uncomfortable. I mean, we may be confronted with some truths we don't know how to handle, and we may even have to learn or unlearn some aspects about ourselves. So this card is telling us that if we're not taking the time to look inward, we need to start making that time to do so, even if it's uncomfortable, because the work we're doing will help us get to a happier tomorrow. Or if we're focusing too much internally, we need to start branching out and reconnect with our support systems and chosen family. So definitely some food for thought as we go through today's episode. And with that, I'd like to introduce our guest. He is an actor, writer, and plant daddy, and recently launched his podcast, The Great Unbecoming. Please welcome Eric Feltus.
Thanks for having me, Rob. I'm happy to be here.
Congrats on the podcast. I know you just launched it last week, so I've been enjoying that, loving every episode.
Thank you so much. It's been such a journey. We got several episodes lined up already, and it's I'm really happy with how it's being received, and it's just a great excuse to be able to connect with people. I'm sure you know as a podcaster yourself.
Definitely. And I can't wait to share the news of that with everybody on this episode. But before we get into that, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you identify, all that fun stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. My name is Eric Feltus. Pronouns are he, him. I am a gay, cisgender, male life coach. I help other gay, bi, trans men free themselves from church shame. I live in Los Angeles. I'm also an actor. And as Rob said, I'm a podcaster. My podcast is The Great Unbecoming. It's stories of unlearning, of letting go of what no longer serves you to become the person that you have always been meant to be. And I've sort of always been in the business of people with acting and podcasting and life coaching. I just love working with people. So opportunities like this to connect with you is totally up my alley. I love it.
And when I was doing a little research beforehand, I saw you're actually in an episode of Shameless.
Yeah. It's so funny you said that because the person who turned me onto your podcast is a new client of mine. And he found me. After he found me, he did some research. And one of the first things he said to me was that I was also on Shameless. And he had just finished the whole series. So he's like, this is a sign I need to sign up for your program now. Because he's like, that's the straw that broke the camel's back. I have a mask on. I'm in the absolute last episode though. So I'm in the last episode of the last season. It was a lot of fun. And which was really cool because it was also the last scene that the two bar regulars, if you know the show, are, they always sit at the bar. They always have quippy comments. It was their last scene that we shot. So it's really emotional for everyone on set. And it was also the last scene that was ever to be recorded in that bar. So that made it really special.
Oh wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Shameless, so I binged the last season when it came out. So I'll have to go back and rewatch it because it's one of those shows that like you watch it so fast, everything kind of blurs
Oh,
together.
sure. 100%.
Well, going off of that, can you tell us a little bit about your career journey from Spanish and theater teacher to actor and writer to life coach?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, I've always been in the business of people and I've always loved working with people. I, when I was in college, I thought I wanted to be an actor. Um, However, I was in the closet. And I think that subconsciously, maybe semi consciously, um, I just thought I couldn't do that. I thought I couldn't be an authentic actor if I wasn't being an authentic human. It just didn't feel safe for me at that time. So I minored in theater, but I double majored in education Spanish, which I absolutely loved. You know, like I said, it's still people. I studied abroad for a year. I loved learning a new language. I loved learning different cultures. And I'll say a huge gift for me, and I do know this comes from a place of privilege. Not everyone has the means to do this, but to be able to study abroad for a year really helped me, you know, as a 19-year-old to understand my own privilege because here I was in different countries struggling with their language and not just, you know, was so fun about studying abroad in Spain is that, you know, I used to live right outside Chicago. So like traveling from like Barcelona to Paris was about the same to travel from like Chicago to Iowa. You know what I mean? Anything wrong with Iowa, but like you get so much more culture for you get much more bang for your buck when it comes to culture, right? So I was able to study abroad, um, Spain and Argentina, and particularly when I was in Europe, I went almost every other weekend to just a different country. It was so wonderful, and so I struggled with languages. I struggled with embarrassment and different cultures, and not feeling like an outsider, right? And oftentimes traveling alone. I can't believe I did that at that age, but I felt fearless at the time. But you know, feeling lonely at times, and in my white cisgender male at that time straight identified body, you know, I had so much privilege, and so it was a nice check for me to realize what it's like to be a little othered. That was a huge gift, and I loved Spanish. I still do. So I taught for about 4.5 years after college, and I also directed the musical, the fall play, and the musical. And then after I came out of the closet when I was 25, I was still teaching. That was sort of the drop in the bucket, and the ripple effect, it was massive. So I started questioning everything. If I was living, you know, I was engaged to a woman at the time, if I was living this quote unquote straight life really for other people, then what else was I doing for other people? And I realized that I really did want to be an actor. So after a couple more years of teaching at that point, I moved to Chicago when I was about 27 to pursue acting. And yeah, I was a substitute teacher. That's kind of how I paid the bills as I was pursuing acting. And I always knew Chicago would be sort of a stepping stone. I knew that LA was going to be my final destination. So I moved to LA. Substitute teaching was not paying the bills in LA. It paid the bills in Chicago. Chicago's a little easier to live off of. The cost of living is a little lower. LA is so expensive. So that just wasn't working. So then I became a property manager and I hated it. It was such a miserable job. I did that for about 5 years, and while pursuing acting, which I'm still doing. And I remember thinking that I was just normalizing misery. So I ended up getting into coaching, and that was a situation where the stars just sort of aligned for me. So many factors. I had a friend who was one of my tenants who was also a gay male life coach. So he sort of introduced me to that possibility. I started creating content because as an actor, I wanted to create more content. And I made this one video where I call it Gay God, where I pretended to be, you know, this very cliche version of God and like the Santa Claus beard and hair and this white robe. And I said, yes, I'm gay. Yes, I'm God. Yes, I'm gay. Get over it. Because, you know, if my children are gay, I said that you're made in the image and likeness of me. So if you're gay, then clearly I'm gay. And I was so naive. I didn't realize that that could fall on the wrong side of the tracks on TikTok, which it did. About 6 months after making that video, I started getting, it blew up, and I would get 100 or 100 or more comments a day. You're going to hell. How dare you? Don't disrespect my God. Leviticus 18:22, blah, 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 blah. And the thing is that I identify as a Christian as well. Not one that feels you need to believe in Jesus to get to heaven, not because I don't think that's what Jesus believed. I'm a Christian from the standpoint of I want to follow Christ, not worship Christ, because Jesus never said, first of all, I also don't think the word Christ is universal to Jesus, but that's another conversation. I believe the point, just like any other religion, is to inspire you to love, period. And so it was so shocking to me that so many people were so hateful. So meeting the life coach, being miserable in my current job, praying, crying to God, what is my purpose in life? So often, I call it prayer. You might call it manifestation. It doesn't matter. It's putting energy towards a question. The question was, what the heck is my purpose? Why am I on this planet? Because acting isn't working, and I'm still going to wait, but I'm not going to wait forever. I'm not a victim, right? Like, I'm not going to sit around and wait for things to happen for me. There's only so much in your control, right? I want to make a difference in the world, and I have so much to give. So all of these things came together, and then I realized, oh, wow, I can put this all together. And all of my gifts really do align. I make videos, which I think are good, and I think come from my acting experience. I have used my trauma of being burned by the church myself, of wishing that I was unalive for being gay, of so badly going hard in such a challenging way, going from hating being gay to tolerating it, to getting to a place where I love and celebrate it. And seeing all these comments made me realize, oh, they're purging their hatred onto me, but also they're bullying other people in their own lives. This is needed work. So instead of being a life coach that can help everyone, because a confused mind says no, if you're a life coach that says, I can help everyone, your business is probably a hobby more than anything else. But if you're very specific with your niche, like I said, I help gay, bi, trans men free themselves from church shame. That's very specific. And it worked out. So the stars aligned. And again, everything led up to this point, and now it just feels like I feel so aligned, and I feel like my prayer has been answered of what my purpose is. I feel like I'm totally living in integrity and in my purpose.
I love that. And what you're saying with the kind of finding that niche audience, I think that's really important, because I think sometimes in the gay world, it's, you feel like you might be hated on, quote unquote, hated on by Christians for being gay, and then also hated on by people in the gay community for being Christian.
Yes.
And it can be really difficult balancing both. So I know you had mentioned you were engaged to a woman and then struggling, with your sexuality or struggling to balance your sexuality with your Christian faith. Something I've kind of gone through as well. I'm Catholic. I still go to mass every weekend, but I actually kind of just stay in the back of the church to have my own reflection time, my own prayer, and then, do tarot on the side when I'm home, but kind of balance it all. But going off of that, how did you, I guess, come to terms with your sexuality and learn to balance, your sexuality and your faith?
Yeah, you mentioned that you sit in the back and you reflect and you use that time, and that's beautiful. I love that you do that. I love that you found that. I want to be very clear, y'all. My job as a coach is not to bring you to church. It's not to bring you out of church. It's not to bring you in the closet. It's not to bring you out of the closet. My job as a coach, and I think the same is for Rob as a podcaster, is to help you to love yourself deeply as you are in whatever vehicle that works for you. So I have had many people tell me many Christians tell me I can't be gay. I've had many gay people tell me I can't be a Christian. That's absolute asinine. This is what works for me, and it's a vehicle that I can use to help myself and to others love themselves and the world around them. I also want to say, when people say there's no one like, I can't tell you how many times people, Rob, tell me, oh, there's no one like me. There are no other gay Christians. I'm like, hi, I'm here. And also, I'm one of the loud ones. Rob is here. He sits in the back, and that's okay. And that works for him, right? So there are many, many more quiet ones than there are loud ones, but there's many of us here. So I'm glad that you told us that. Thank you. There was a moment in my life where I was struggling with deconstruction, and it was after I started my business, actually. And I had a panic attack, and I had this thought of like, what if there is no afterlife, period? I had come to the conclusion that if there was a heaven and a hell, that I was going to heaven. I just knew that in my heart. And I had struggled with, maybe there's not a hell, but I'm like, but there's something, right? So for the first time in my life, I was like, what if there's nothing? And that thought terrified me and set me through this massive panic attack. And through the end of that, I remember sitting on the edge of the couch and I was sobbing, and I heard, I envisioned myself walking into the room, and this wasn't like a vision where like I could reach out and touch this person, like, I sensed and I saw me, and I also knew at that moment that that version of me was Christ. That's not to say that I'm God, but that's also to say that I'm God. But it's also to say that you're God, that we're all God, that God is love. And in this moment, personified by an image of me was love. That's what it was. It was Christ. It was universal Christ. Um, and this version of me said, Eric, thank you for never giving up on me. And I just broke down. I mean, I sobbed and I said, I would never give up on you. And to me, because of the way I was brought up, that was Christ, and also a form of Jesus. Again, if I had been brought up Muslim, it probably wouldn't have been Jesus. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not about the words, and images are very finite, but love is infinite, and love flows like water down to the deepest crevices imaginable. So I think that universe, God, love, whatever you want to call it, um, chose what I knew because of the stories that I knew. And that works for me, right? Does that make sense? So in that moment of thank you for never giving up on me, I think they were saying thank you for never giving up on Christianity, because I think that Christianity can be a source of love and can be a vehicle towards wholeness. And I think I can use that tool. I preach at the pulpit. I preach my own story of how my queerness is next to godliness. And while the church is a symbol for so much pain and trauma for so many people, and I hate that, I also know that we can transform it from within. And I also respect people walking away from it. But through that experience, I recognized that the more I love my queerness, the more I feel seen and loved by Christ. I had this image then as I was sobbing. Like at this point, I was on the floor and my hands were like on the couch. Like I was like sobbing into the couch and my knees were on the floor. And I had this image of Jesus in Gethsemane the night before he was murdered, crying on a rock, saying, God, I don't want to do this. Don't make me do this, please. Begging. He was 33. He was so scared. Let's remember that confidence is not the absence of fear. Confidence is the ability to hold fear and love at the same time. So yes, Jesus was confident in his mission, but he was scared. And in that moment of deep despair for me, I felt as if I was able to so humanize Jesus. I think the people that crucified Jesus 2,000 years ago are the same people that use Jesus as a weapon against the queer community today. They don't know Jesus. They don't know how to humanize Jesus because they haven't been able to humanize themselves. The deeper and richer you feel pain, the deeper and richer you can feel love. And so the more I have been able to fully love myself through all of that pain, through all of that trauma, the more I'm able to feel so connected with my Christianity, which is the vehicle that I have been given, and to also choose to continue down my path of wholeheartedness.
I heard you say the word love quite a few times, which I really love hearing that because, growing up, well, at least for me, I feel, Christianity, Catholicism, it's the basis of most religion is love, compassion, kindness to each other. And we're taught that as we're younger. And then all of a sudden, when we get older, at least for me anyway, when I was younger, that's what I learned. And then when I got older is when I hear, oh, well, there's actually exceptions to that rule. And, growing up, you hear God loves you no matter what. But then when you get older, you start hearing people saying, well, he loves you no matter what, as long as you buy to A, B, and C. And I think it's kind of, at least for me, what I've done is I've tried to separate the church as an organization versus, what I view as God and the religion, because people will interpret things how they want. And at least for me, the core foundation of that is love. And so that's what I'm trying to choose to believe for my own religion that might not align with the church's religion, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and also we can separate religion from spirituality, right? Religion comes from the root word religos, which means bound, whereas spirituality comes from spirit, which means free. Your relationship with your higher power is an individual, unique, specific relationship that no one else can understand, period. Period. So when we use things like the Bible as a rule book, we're binding them to earthly matters, to man-made laws, and that's not God. God is so much bigger than that.
I'm really glad that you were able to take those own personal experiences to channel into your business and then to put that out there to help other gay men who are also maybe kind of struggling to balance, their sexuality and their religion. And that leads us into the Great Unbecoming, which is, I believe, the life coaching program you set up first and then the podcast after. Is that correct?
Kind of, yeah. So the Great Unbecoming is the name of the podcast, but that came after the program. So I have a 10-week program called the Shame-Free Gay Life Program. I do say the word gay, bi, trans, people identify as male. So the Great Unbecoming, the title came after the program, and the reason is because I recognize that what I'm doing with these gay, bi, trans, non-binary men is a universal process of learning how to radically love yourself. And while I don't invite people outside of that category into the program, I think for this community, I think it is important to have some sameness, and that sameness can be the same specific trauma as queer men that have been traumatized and burned by the church, right? So I think that for that community aspect, I think that's important. But I do realize that the message is so much more universal than that. So I wanted to rebrand that in the podcast and make sort of the similar message to a much broader audience. And what do the podcast and the Shame-Free Gay Life program all have in common? They're all stories of unbecoming. It's all letting go of that which no longer serves you in order to step into our own authenticity and become the people that we've always been meant to be.
And going to the program you're talking about, kind of twofold question here. One, for people who might not be aware of what life coaching is, can you kind of give an overview of what they can expect? And then two, specifically with the niche audience you're helping, what could they expect from your program?
I like to describe what coaching is by talking about what it's not. So life coaching is not therapy. Differences are this, therapy's great. I love therapy. I've had wonderful therapists. Some of the guys in my program that have been through or have therapy have been the most successful. Therapy gives you a good foundation of mindfulness. Therapy focuses much more on the past and how that affects your present, whereas coaching focuses more on your present and how that affects your future and sets you up for future success. One thing I hear from a lot of people who come to me through therapy is that, I know all of these things, but I don't know what to do with it. So it's kind of like therapy kind of like gives you all of the pieces, but I think coaching kind of helps you to put the pieces together. So that doesn't mean we don't dive into the past. We dive into a lot of unresolved trauma, 100%. But that's a broad stroke definition. Another one is that because of mandates, therapists can't share as much personal information about their personal lives as coaches can. And I think that works for therapy. I think that's important. It's an important container for therapy. Coaching is different. No, I'm not your friend, but there's not as much standing between us. And so with a field like ours, when we're dealing with shame, Brene Brown says that shame hates to have words wrapped around it. And so if you talk to me about a story of, shame around sex, or a walk of shame, or fear around dating, or fear around coming out to someone, or grief over the loss of someone who doesn't want to be your friend because you came out, or your perfectionism or people pleasing, or whatever you're dealing with because of the shame. I've been there. I've been in all of those dark places. I want to share personal stories of myself with my clients so that they feel as if they're not alone. Shame will tell you that you're alone, and you're not. And so unlike therapy, I can share those deep personal stories with my clients. So that's another big difference. But overall, coaching is, I'll say it again, it clarifies where you are and sets you up for success in your future. In my program, every program is different. My program, we set goals. There's a community aspect. So you're going to meet other gay, bi men in the program. There's community calls. There's one-on-one calls. And you also have access to me whenever you need me, and I get back to you within 24 hours or by the next business day. The reason that is because, I could teach you to swim by reading a book on the side of the pool, but if you never jump in the water, you're never going to learn how to swim. So the community calls help you to swim, right? To put that into practice with other men. But also, you go out into the world and you go on that date. Like, we'll set you up for goals and you're going to push yourself out of your comfort zone and do those things. And then you're going to come back to me or message me and let me know how that went. So you're getting out of the water to talk to me, and then you're going back in the water to do the thing. And I always say that energy is transferable. So the relationships you're building with me and with the guys in the program, directly relatable or very transferable to the relationships in your real life. I told you that, so many men say that they're not Christian enough for Christians, they're not gay enough for gay people. Here's a group of people that have been burned in similar ways. And another thing I hear, Rob, often is that it's so easy for us to get notches on the belt. I am very sex positive. I don't, that's another conversation. It's not about not having sex. It's about what happens, though, when we don't jump to using sex as a way of avoiding discomfort. So in this program, there's that container of we're getting to know each other on a much more vulnerable level. And again, that'll give you confidence, and that's transferable to those other relationships. So I think that this is a much more wholehearted, whole body, whole brain, whole heart approach to healing.
That's awesome. And I love hearing the sex positive note, because I can imagine that going through this program, kind of a twofold thing as a compound layer with religion is, one, there tends to be shame with sexuality, just general sexuality from religion as a starter point. But two, being gay, there's that additional layer of shame within there. So I think it's really important that that's addressed. Part of the issue is a lot of gay men feel that they're alone when really they're not alone. There's a lot of people like them out there in this situation. So what are some of maybe the more common scenarios you've seen of men who feel that they're alone coming into this program and realizing they're not alone?
Yeah, people pleasing is a big one. That's why, y'all, if you sign up for our email list, the first email is a 4-step guide to break free from your people pleaser prisons. We have so many resources available. So there's people pleasing, there's perfectionism, there's shame around desire, right? We are taught to not desire. We are taught that we are bad for desiring what we desire. And that goes beyond sex. We live small. Like, I didn't want to be an actor, right? Like, I was wrong to want that. When I started my coaching business, I thought at the beginning, like, I can't make money. That's not okay. So we're taught to live very small, right? One of the first modules that you do with me, I call it, dare to desire. It's get you out of your comfort zone and clarify what you want in your life. And it's very uncomfortable. It sounds simple. It's not. So that also, like I said, people pleasing, we live the life that other people want us to live. People pleasing, there's nothing wrong with pleasing others, but it becomes people pleasing when you please others at your own expense, right? So how can we learn to take up the amount of space that straight, cisgender, white men have been afforded since the dawn of time, right? That's their privilege. There's nothing wrong with that privilege, but it is what it is. So how can we take up the space that we want? And also, how can we set boundaries for when people push back on that? People tell me often, that their family or people in their life will say, like, you've changed. Well, thank God they've changed, because then I've done my job, right? They're not living by your norms anymore. So yeah, I mean, to answer your question in short, shame can show up and manifest in so many different arenas. Other things is loneliness, not having friends, not having a community, not having gay, healthy gay relationships outside of the notches on your belt, or not having sex at all. I have other men that it's like, I have some men that they're not ready to have sex. I have other men. I had a client once, Rob. He was 67. The first thing he said to me in the consultation was, I want to have sex. He had, I want to say 2 children. He had an ex-wife. He had been divorced and out of the closet for 6 years, still never had sex with a man. 2 weeks into the program, he had sex with a man. I remember when he said that to me, like, I want to have sex. I was like, okay, well, this isn't like I'm not a sex worker. So how am I going to make this, not like there's nothing wrong with sex work, but I was like, how am I going to make this work for him? And what we did was we set a plan together that involved building his confidence, that involved getting out of his comfort zone, that involved figuring out, clarifying his desires. What kind of sex do you want? Things like that. 2 weeks into the program, he had sex for the first time. By the time the program was over, he was in his first relationship. So this stuff works. You just got to be willing to get out of your comfort zone. You got to be willing to approach this with an open mind and an open heart. And you have to be willing to be committed, to commit to the process.
That's amazing. And I love that, being committed to the process, because obviously, it's kind of a daily thing. You can't just show up once and then not do the homework and hope that everything just changes overnight. You have to continually put in the work. So that being said, from that 10-week program you have, do you have any other kind of success stories you like to talk about of people who have gone through the program and have had, great success afterwards? And obviously understand that we have to maintain confidentiality.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll also say on top of the 10-week program, we have an ongoing leadership program where men who finish the work can continue the work to become leaders in the community. To go off of that swimming metaphor, I say that the 10-week program teaches you how to swim, but the ongoing leadership program teaches you how to be an Olympic athlete. So you learn how to teach others how to swim. You learn how to swim with others. You learn how to, again, hold that endurance and really get the life that you want to continue that work to become more of a leader. So other success stories, my gosh, I mean, I'm thinking of 2 clients who met in the program and now they're in a relationship. One of them wasn't out to his family at all. Now he's fully out and in a relationship. The other one struggled big time with confidence. I'm speaking a little vague because I do know that some people know them. So anything I've said so far is not confidential, but yeah, struggled with confidence and really loving himself deeply as he is, and also struggled with breaking ties from, organizations that did not love and accept him as he is. So I'm thinking of them. I'm thinking of a client who, wanted to start his own business and was struggling financially. By the end of the program, he got a $50,000 grant for his program, for his business. I can't tell you how many people have started their own businesses through this work. There are so many potential leaders in the queer community. They just need to, again, it starts with daring to desire. The number of people I could tell you that have, built their confidence, had sex for the first time, been in relationships for the first time. Some of them have gone back to church because they were so burned before, but they wanted that. Some of them had the courage to leave church for the last time. So every journey is different, but it all involves becoming resilient of that shame, daring to desire, and daring to take up the space that we are worthy of taking up.
Amazing. I love that. So this is great work you're doing. And again, I know the podcast just came out. I'm super excited to see where it goes and keep listening to it. So for you, what does the future look like between your podcast and your life coaching? Where would you like to take it?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I love that question. The podcast is going to be a top-rated podcast. That's what I'm manifesting, as is yours already. So yeah, I want The Great Unbecoming to be a top-rated podcast. I want to the program is already sustainable, but I want to continue to grow the program. I want to eventually write my own book. I want to tour with the book that I've written. I want to sell out arenas and be a speaker and reach wider audiences with the help of the book and the podcast and the program. I've toyed around with the idea of coaching other queer coaches and kind of expanding life coaching by Feltus. I understand that I have limitations in my privilege as a white cisgender man, and that doesn't really relate to every single person that needs this work. So if I'm ever at a point where I can have the time and the resources to coach other coaches, other queer coaches, trans coaches, people of color, so that I can expand this work and reach more people, that's sort of in the back of my mind, maybe 5 or 10 years down the road. So there's a lot of fun stuff coming up. Right now, like you said, it's really is focused on the podcast, and I'm having so much fun doing that.
That's awesome. And I'll be sure to include all the links to all your stuff in here, because everybody who's listening, please go check out Eric and all his work after this. It's really great, beneficial information. So I highly recommend. And I guess as we're kind of getting towards the end here, for anyone who's considering working with you or a life coach, but maybe is hesitant and unsure and kind of maybe even a little fearful, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I say that nothing is done without fear. So if you are afraid, Do your best to differentiate the voice of fear from the voice of God and worthiness. Um, it is possible that you are feeling afraid because you've never done this. That's it. Your body, dear listener, your body does not want healthy. Your body wants normal. It wants to regulate what it's been doing your whole life. Is it possible that that voice of fear is the same voice that kept you in the closet or is keeping you in the closet? That's keeping you from living the life that you want. So if you're feeling a little stressed, a little bit of fear, I think that it's probably a sign that you're on the right track. What you can do is you can reach out to me. I'm on Instagram, Eric Feltes, EricFeltes. And what you do is you just DM me the word help. That's it. That's all. You don't need to know words. All you need to know is one word. It's the word help. You can DM me the word help. If you want to fast track the process, what you can do is you can go on my Instagram, again, EricFeltes. And the link in my bio, if you click on it, there's a link in that link tree that says, it's Drumeo, but either way, you click on the link in my bio and there's a sub link in there that says, book a free discovery call. You can click on that, answer a couple of questions if you're ready for that. And then we will have an hour-long free Zoom call face-to-face to figure out where you are and where you want to be and dig down into the how I can help you. And then I can answer any questions that you might have about the program and we can get you started that way. If you're not ready, that's okay. But here's the thing, you'll never be ready. There's a million reasons not to live your best life. And has that been working for you so far? And if not, when are you going to draw the line in the sand and take the step to live your best life and to unbecome that which no longer serves you?
I mean, it's scary to put in the work, but I mean, that fear of going outside your comfort zone is what ultimately helps with growth. And I think that ties back into the tarot card with the Hermit in reverse, is that either we're spending too much time reflecting inwards or not enough time reflecting inwards, because sometimes that looking inside and confronting what might actually be keeping us up at night can be scary. But it's important to just kind of, recognize that fear and welcome it, but don't let that hold you back from taking the next step to a happier, healthier future.
I was just thinking about what I said about drawing the line in the sand. That's exactly what the Hermit card is, right? Make a change. What's working for you right now isn't working, or what's happening right now isn't working. So draw a line in the sand and dig deep in. Or if you've already been digging so deep in, take the leap. I love that, Rob. Good connection.
Thank you. And, before we wrap up, is there anything we didn't cover that you'd like to, include?
Yeah, I mean, the foundation of what Rob and I do is love. Everything comes from a place of fear or a place of love. So I'm confident saying this is true for Rob as well, but you are always welcome in my space and Rob's space. We love you, and love is an action. It's not a feeling, right? So we see you as you are. We embrace you as and because of who you are, not in spite of who you are. So when in doubt, ask yourself, where is the place of love, and let me follow that.
Awesome. I love that. And then, Eric, I know you already plugged your Instagram, but where else can people find you? Tell them all the things.
Yeah, so it is Eric Feltes at Instagram. It's eric.feltes at TikTok. You can email me, Eric at lifecoachingbyfeltes.com. You can go to www.lifecoachingbyfeltes.com. You can also search wherever you listen to podcasts, The Great Unbecoming.
And definitely check it out. Like I said, I've listened to the first 2 episodes that have been out so far and absolutely love it. I think, for anybody who might come to this podcast trying to find ways to overcome shame and trauma, this is an excellent additional podcast to listen to. So make sure you subscribe, check it out, and give him a follow on Instagram and TikTok. Also for our podcast, as you know, you can find A Jaded Gay on Instagram, TikTok, SoundCloud, and YouTube at A Jaded Gay Pod. You can contact me, Rob at ajadedgay.com with any feedback or questions about the episode. You can also follow me personally, Rob_Loveless on Instagram. And remember, every day is all we have, so you got to make your own happiness. Bye.
Bye.